Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar and class on how to start thriving with autoimmune disorder rather than just surviving. So I'm going to start off by sharing with you the slides that I created. So let me here and show you the slides. Things that we have. Okay, so welcome to this class on thriving with autoimmunity. So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about myself and my story, why it is that I am doing this webinar, and sharing a little bit about what I hope that you will get out of it. And then we will proceed. And then at the end, we'll be sharing with you some of the resources that I recommend, as well as a couple different ways that you can work together with me to get some help with helping you to thrive with your autoimmune condition rather than just survive. Okay, so start off a little bit. So to begin with, a lot of us, when we are on a journey to healing from any kind of an autoimmune condition, we start off by merely just surviving, and then we move to coping, and then we move to thriving. And I'd love to know if you would post either in the chat or the comments, where do you feel like you're at right now? Do you feel like you're just surviving? Do you feel like you're coping? Or do you feel like you're thriving? And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about who I am. So my name, like as you figured out, is Anna Laura Brown. I have a blog at annalaurabrown.com. I also am a podcast host, and my podcast is called Autoimmune Rehab. And I'm going to take a minute here and hopefully you'll be able to see this and go show you, let's see here, what my podcast looks like so that you can potentially find it and look at it. I consider my podcast to be one of the more useful tools that you can use to help you in your journey to autoimmune healing. And so, as you can see, it's called Autoimmune Rehab, and I is primarily guest interviews. So I release them every Friday. The one that came out last Friday was all about silent killers like Lyme, mold, long haul COVID, that kind of thing. The one that came out last week was all about how to get relief from pain. The one the week before was about thyroid issues in men, which they're a lot more common in women, but they do also happen in men as well. And, you can just see, and then I have some short episodes as well. So I really highly recommend that one of the things you do is go find Autoimmune Rehab wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or I believe I'm also on Audible, other things like that. And you can also listen from my blog and learn, as much as you can from other people's autoimmune healing journeys. And that is the main reason that I started the podcast, was to be able to help people learn from the journeys that other people have experienced, their challenges, their trials, what they would go back and do differently if they could change things based on what they know now about how to heal an autoimmune disorder, all that kind of thing. And then a couple other things about me. So I also am a certified health coach with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, graduated from that year-long program in 2015. I've also been really into essential oils since about 2010, 2011. And I learned a lot about that as well. I also work full-time for a tech company where we sell a booking and payments platform for travel. And so I really, really like to travel a lot. And I have found ways to help make it so that I can travel despite, some of my health challenges that sometimes will pop up. Originally, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2018, so that is what started my journey with autoimmune condition. And I'm fortunate now that I don't have a lot of symptoms, and I'm in the process of, it's almost into full remission. Thank goodness. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, we'll share with you some of the things that I did to put myself into remission. And so, that's just how, I got started with this journey of autoimmune. And so let's get going now with some of the rest of this. So I like to obviously take a holistic approach when it comes to healing autoimmune. And the reality is that holistic is really the only way that you will ever actually heal or get into remission from any kind of an autoimmune disorder. You can't, there are no, for most autoimmune disorders, I mean, there are a few exceptions, but especially with like the thyroid ones, which are the more common ones, like the Hashimoto's and the Graves, that really the only solution is holistic. So things like even thyroid medication won't actually heal an autoimmune condition. And in most cases, even with some of the others, things like MS or rheumatoid arthritis, things like that, there definitely is a lot that you can do to help you to thrive and to improve your overall health and well-being without drugs. And in some cases the drugs may be necessary, but you really aren't going to really thrive and really improve your health long term through any method other than a holistic method. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about lifestyle modifications. So there's a lot of different lifestyle modifications that you can make that can help you to thrive and experience autoimmune wellness. Basically, I put them into two categories. So one category would be like things for your physical health. So that would include things like making sure that you're exercising on a regular basis. Ideally, I recommend exercising in the morning, at least some exercise in the morning. Also making diet modifications, things like that, supplements, stuff like that, and then things for your mental well-being. So that would be kind of like you can see in the second picture here, things like meditation and yoga, and just other things to help support your mental well-being. So you want to make sure that you focus on both your physical well-being and your mental well-being in order to help you on your journey to autoimmune healing. Okay, so then we got a few other things there. And let's move on to this next one. So the next thing that you want to think about with autoimmune healing and helping you to thrive and not just survive is restoring balance. So a lot of us, when we get diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, we are already having some issues with not being really well balanced in our lives, but that has a tendency to make things worse when you find out you have an autoimmune condition. So you can end up, really getting thrown off. And so in order for you to really thrive, you need to work on restoring your balance. And there are a variety of different ways that you can do that, but one way is through proper self-care. And a lot of us, don't take the time to slow down, reduce stress, engage in proper self-care, all that kind of thing. And which is one of the reasons that the freebie I offer on my blog for joining my email list is a 30-day self-care journal template. So you can go there to annalaurabrown.com/self-care, or it's available on the homepage of my blog at annalaurabrown.com. And I can provide a separate link if that's something that's needed, but you kind of get the idea that really taking the time to figure out how to change and reduce your stress. And in some cases that may require some pretty major change. Like one of the podcast episodes that I have, and it's one that's with a man actually, who completely healed his rheumatoid arthritis. One of the things that he finally ultimately had to do was he actually had to make a career change, because he realized that the current career he was in was fueling his stress and making his arthritis and his autoimmune even worse. So in some cases, you may have to make major changes, but so a lot of people can benefit from even minor to, I don't want to necessarily call things minor, because a lot of times it might seem like the changes are not minor to you, but they can be relatively simple changes that you can make that can help to restore balance in your life. So if you're watching this, I would like to invite you to take a few minutes and think about what kinds of things might be out of balance in your life and what kinds of things can you do to restore balance. And we're going to sit here for a minute and I want you to write down what some of those things are. And I want you to think about all the different areas in your life where you could restore balance. So let's think about more than just like your physical health, things like your mental health, things like your exercise, things like your work, your social life, your spiritual life, which can include religion but doesn't have to, your family life, your home life, just all the different areas of your life that include a well-balanced person. And think about, which areas in your life are very out of balance, which ones are maybe only just a little bit out of balance, and what kinds of things can you do to restore balance to those different areas of your life. And this is one thing that I can help you with if you decide you want to reach out and do a what I call pick my brain coaching session, and we'll be talking more about that at the end tonight. But I am not a full-blown health coach in the sense that I don't take on clients long term, but I do offer 1 hour pick my brain sessions. And one thing that we can go over is talking about some of the different ways that you may need some help in restoring balance if that's an area that is something that you really have a need for. Okay, so then the next thing that you want to do is you want to work on reducing inflammation. And if you have any kind of an autoimmune disorder at all, you have inflammation in your body, period. That is just the reality. And the main 3 ways that you can reduce that is through dietary changes, supplements, and lifestyle modifications. And inflammation basically manifests itself in a lot of people through either some kind of an autoimmune disorder or through pain. So if you have any amounts of moderate to chronic pain, then you probably also have some pretty severe issues with inflammation. And in some cases, you may be able to even tell you physically you have inflammation because you may have, like swollen knees, swollen arms, just specific pain or inflammation that you can point to in a specific part of your body. But sometimes you don't necessarily, and it can be really hard to figure out, where did I get that from? And there's a lot of ways and reasons you may have that inflammation, but you've just really got to work on getting it down. And this is one of the reasons why people are recommended so frequently when you have an autoimmune condition and have really out of control inflammation to do things like giving up gluten, dairy, and sugar. Those 3 are what we often call the 3 devils. So they're going to be recommended that you give those up at least for a certain period of time. I will tell you that as you heal your gut and you become more into, things become better and healthier for you, you may be able to do things like go on a trip to Europe and still eat some gluten, depending on what your autoimmune condition is like and how sensitive you are. Like, I know that I couldn't eat it at all, period, but now I am able to travel and go to Europe and eat the gluten over there, but I still don't eat gluten when I'm at home in the United States. And I used to have to completely give up all dairy products, but I now am able to have some dairy in moderation. And sugar is just really not good for anybody. And I strive to live about 95% sugar free. And that really is what I recommend that everybody does, because sugar not only creates inflammation, but I have noticed a direct correlation between having pain in different parts of my body and consuming sugar. And if you don't believe me, I dare you to try it. If you're experiencing some issues with pain, start taking a journal and start tracking where you see the pain show up. And if that pain shows up in a direct correlation to consuming sugar, then you'll know that that's really the case of what's going on. And then other lifestyle modifications, so things like meditation is always really good. Exercise as well, and stretching. So one of the reasons that some of us end up with a lot of pain in especially areas like our knees and our back is that we don't do enough exercise and enough stretching. And specific exercises can be things like doing like cardio dancing, going swimming, getting up in the morning and doing like some gentle yoga type stretches, different things like that. And just really, really important to help reduce that inflammation and get it down, help with the gut, things like prebiotic and probiotic foods, taking a probiotic supplement, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so then you also need to work on your gut health optimization. So if you have any kind of an autoimmune condition, you definitely have some gut health issues. And some people have it worse than others. So there's a condition called SIBO, which it basically stands for small intestinal bacteria things. And a lot of people will end up with that along with an autoimmune condition. And if you have that, you have a really serious gut issue. Fortunately for me, I don't have that. And that's not something I've ever had. But the more allergies and food sensitivities you have, the more likely you also are to have gut health issues. And some of the really simple ways that you can help work on the gut, I've already mentioned, is with a really high quality probiotic, also increasing probiotic and prebiotic foods. So that would mean things like pickles, kimchi, and other kinds of fermented foods. And I know that these a lot of times are foods that a lot of us don't really like to eat. We find these foods to have kind of a weird taste, and it may just not be our favorite foods ever, but it is really important to be able to help heal your gut to get those prebiotics and probiotics from the fermented foods. And there are ways that you can make some at home. You can Google online and find some different instructions on how to do it. I mean, I've done different kinds of things, like even pickling red onion to include in like my salads and vegetable stir fries, egg omelets, things like that. And also things like drinking small amounts of apple cider vinegar or other kinds of fermented drinks as well. However, if you do have something like SIBO, then you got to be really, really careful with that. But that can be a really good way of helping with your gut health. Also, you may want to consider working with some kind of a functional health practitioner to do some specialized tests that will test for some of the different challenges and things that you might have when it comes to gut health. And I can refer you out to somebody to do that. I know several people doing that from doing my autoimmune rehab podcast. Personally, that's not something that I specialize in or have experience with, but like I said, I can refer you out to somebody to help you with that. I'm sorry about that. I keep talking too much and my throat gets dry and it makes me cough. So I need to take a break here and drink a little water. The other thing you can also work on to help you thrive with autoimmune, as you can see here, is working on building resilience. So a lot of us have resilience and pretty good resilience when we're young with little kid and we're a little child. But then as we grow up and become older, this becomes less and less of a thing. And so, building that resilience, that stick-to-itness, that ability to be able to just keep going when the tough things get tough. And the more resilience you build, the easier it will be for you to actually thrive and not just survive with your autoimmune condition. Oh man, I'm coughing so much. Sorry about that. Okay. And so you want to do research different ways and things that you can do to build resilience. And a lot of us, especially if we've been on this autoimmune journey for a while, like I mentioned with me, it officially started with my diagnosis in 2018. So that was, 7 years ago now. But my doctor had told me that I'd probably had it for at least 5 years before that, simply just because he was the third doctor and I'd been sick for a while and I just couldn't seem to get any real solutions, which unfortunately is another really common thing that happens a lot with those of us that have autoimmune conditions. Okay, so the other thing you also want to work on is a positive mindset. So one of the things that I always tell people, and a lot of my guests have always told people, is that you got to work on the mindset that you have, and to really focus in on it. And one of the things that you want to work on is realizing that just because you have an autoimmune diagnosis today doesn't mean that you'll have it forever. So a lot of people, they get slapped with that label, if you will, with that autoimmune diagnosis, and then they immediately think, oh no, I'm doomed. This is something I'm just going to have to live with forever. And the reality is that you won't have to live with it forever. And you, especially if you really are proactive about your healing. And so, have that positive mindset and that positive believe that you can put your autoimmune condition into remission, believe that you can thrive and not just survive. And even on the days when it's really hard, do what you can to continue going with a positive mindset. And you will find that having that positive mindset will definitely help improve your health and well-being, and will help make you a lot better off than if you are down in the dumps all the time, being like, oh, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. How to come, I got an autoimmune condition, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so then the next thing we also want to talk about are some stress management techniques. So the reality is that stress makes autoimmune conditions worse. It just simply does. And in some cases, stress may have been one of the reasons why you initially even got your autoimmune condition. So what can you do about helping to manage that stress and control it so that you can move forward in life and so that you can thrive? And one of the more common things that I like to recommend to people, of course, is meditation. And a lot of people sometimes get overwhelmed with meditation, but there are a lot of different simple things that you can do with meditation. So with today's day and age, we've been blessed with a lot of technology, lots of different things. There are lots of different apps you can get on your phone to help you with meditation. So for example, Insight Timer is a really common one. There's one called Calm. There's one called Headspace. And nearly all of these have the ability to do some things for free without even having to pay for it. Or you can also even look up meditations on YouTube, find podcasts or music that focus on meditation. And the reality is that the how and the what, how exactly you do it doesn't really matter. You just want to do it. And personally, I find it the most beneficial to do it for about 10 to 15 minutes right before I go to bed at night. Or sometimes if I'm having a really stressful day at work or whatever, then I'll do it for a few minutes in the middle of a work day. A couple other techniques that can really help is to do journaling. So that can mean, just getting out a plain pen and paper or notebook and start writing about your thoughts, your feelings, let things come out, write about the things that you're stressed about, write about things that, are bothering you, try to come up with solutions, things that can help empower you, that kind of thing. And then, of course, I'm also a fan of aromatherapy. So things like lavender essential oil or other kinds of stress reducing essential oils can also really help to either diffuse those or just smell those. And, if things are really going bad, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of chocolate. Personally, I really prefer the dark chocolate. That actually is not too terrible for your health. And as long as you don't go down the rabbit hole of indulging in too much, a little bit can also be good for you. And then, think about, you want to also evaluate your life from the biggest perspective. They say that a lot of times the most heart attacks and accidents and all that kind of thing happens on Mondays, and that's when the ER rooms are the busiest. So you want to think about, if you have a job that you hate, or a job that is super stressful all the time, or if you're living a life then where you basically just can't wait for the weekend, or you just can't wait for the next vacation, then you probably need to reevaluate what you're doing and see if there's ways that you can make changes to help you have less stress overall and to help you develop more of a life that you enjoy, regardless of the status of your health, that kind of thing. Because not having a job that you enjoy, not having a good high quality of life, and having too much stress all the time will definitely make it harder for you to heal from your autoimmune condition. Okay, so then the next aspect, of course, is adequate rest and rejuvenation and the power of rest. So this is another thing that a lot of us who have those autoimmune conditions, a lot of times we really struggle with resting. We may really struggle with our sleep. And so if you are not getting at least 7 hours of good high quality sleep at night, this really needs to change. And I have some resources that I can share with you towards the end that you can help figure out how to get better sleep. But it really is must, because you will not heal from an autoimmune condition without adequate sleep. That is just all there is to it. And so obviously the first thing here is to figure out, why are you not sleeping, and make the changes that you can to your environment, develop more of a high quality sleep routine. And quite frankly, not getting good sleep can also be interconnected with stress. If you're stressed a lot, having a lot of things going on that hating your life, you may be lying down in bed trying to go to sleep, and all you're doing is thinking about all the things that you've got to do tomorrow, or all the crappy things that happened in the day earlier, that kind of thing. And those kinds of things are not going to help you actually get good high quality sleep. And sleep, and a lack of sleep and a lack of stress can and will actually even kill you over time. There is actually a lot of studies that have been shown. And I promise, after years and years of somebody who struggled with a lot of sleep and who now pretty much sleeps like a baby all night long, almost every night, that there are things that you can do to help fix this. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some of stories of transformation, some hope and inspiration. And so to do that, I want to point out and return again to my podcast, Autoimmune Rehab. That is where you will find a lot of the stories that people have come on and shared with me. And some of the stories that I have on here are really amazing. I have everything from people who literally couldn't even function, to the point that now you would never even know they had an autoimmune condition on here. And this is showing what it looks like on Apple. But the reality is that if you really are needing some motivation and wanting to learn more about how you can heal yourself and how other people have done it, I really highly recommend that you come on here. It doesn't have to be an Apple, it could be on Spotify. I'm pretty much on all the podcast platforms, and check this out, listen to some of these stories, and learn from other people about how they have healed themselves, and get that hope and that inspiration from these other people, because we can always learn a lot of things from other people and about how they have been able to successfully heal their autoimmune conditions. So the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit about how I can help you out, some of the different resources, things that I have available to help you go from just merely surviving to thriving. So the first thing I have is, as I mentioned earlier, is the ability for you to sign up and pay for just a 1-hour coaching session, where it's basically what I call a pick my brain session. You can come on here, it's $50, and you can just literally ask me anything you want. I typically have you fill out a form ahead of time, so I have a pretty good idea of what kinds of things you're going to be asking me for, what kinds of things you're going to be needing help with. And I do not currently myself offer full-on coaching programs, so this is not going to be a 1 hour and then an upsell, because I don't really have one to give you. So, I do, however, have a lot of resources from my podcast and things like that with other people that can run labs and do functional medicine and things like that. So if you need a referral for that, I can definitely help you with that. The other thing you can also take a look at is, this is here on my blog at annalaurabrown.com/resources. And you can come here and see that I've got a lot of these are affiliate links, but things to some of the different things that have really helped me. So infrared sauna, infrared lights, which is another thing that I didn't really talk about in detail, but I have several blog posts and a podcast about it, and talked about it more about it in the past. That was really life-changing for my autoimmune, is when I started doing that on a regular basis. Things like, online grocery shopping, some of the better books about healing, resources related to aromatherapy, resources related to food, gluten-free. They're all different, reducing pain, self-care, all different kinds of things are on here. And then, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you go to just the homepage, or, a lot of the blog posts, you can come in here and get on my email list and get your free 30-day self-care journal template. That can be really helpful for helping you develop a self-care routine. And then you will get automatic updates where I will update you about some of the new podcast guests that are coming out and different important things like that. And then last but not least, I also have this Empower Her Wellness Navigating Autoimmune Living with Ease. So this is my online course where I cover things like Wheel of Life, self-care, how to get better sleep, how to reduce stress, how to go through and do a gluten-free and elimination diet, the strategies for reducing autoimmune flare-up, all that kind of thing. You can see it's 29 lessons for $97, so it's a pretty good deal, and you just do it online at your own self-pace. So that's basically what I have. So now I am going to stop the screen sharing, and I'm going to stop the recording, and we will open it up and see if we have any questions that anybody wants to have answered.